Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. What if Luffy had met Kaido instead of Shanks at the beginning of One Piece? Just imagine, what if Luffy had crossed paths with Kaido at the beginning of his journey instead of Shanks? We know that One Piece is full of crazy possibilities, but this idea is like a slap in the face of destiny. The mere thought of it is the kind of thing that could flip Eiichiro Oda's world upside down and make us wonder, what would the story be like if everything were different? That's the beauty of One Piece. There's always room to imagine alternate scenarios that could make any fan's head spin. I hope for your support to help our crew win, and to do so, you just need to click the thumbs up button, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. By doing this, you will win an incredible devil fruit, so just comment which fruit you want. At the start of the story, when Luffy meets Shanks and his crew, it's a mix of admiration, learning, and one of those wake-up calls about what it truly means to be a pirate. Shanks, with his calm and friendly nature, teaches Luffy the importance of friendship, freedom, and of course, always keeping a smile on his face. But what if it had been Kaido, the sea monster, the guy who goes toe-to-toe with the biggest and destroys everything in his path? What would have happened to Luffy? I can't help but wonder if the entire story would have changed, or if Luffy would have become something completely different, perhaps even a pirate with a much more chaotic and reckless style. First of all, we would have to imagine Kaido in a more relaxed moment, like, say, in a bar in the East Blue. Yeah, this guy with an apocalyptic vibe just chilling in a random bar. Go figure, right? Kaido has this tendency to show up where we least expect him. Remember when he appeared out of nowhere, jumping from a floating island in the sky? Imagine him just strolling around, bored, with no clear reason, maybe trying to avoid a confrontation or just taking a walk to avoid being at home. He could have easily shown up in the East Blue like that, just casually, without any real motive, and crossed paths with Luffy. Now, if Kaido had met Luffy in that village, oh boy, the conversation wouldn't have been sweet at all. No, follow your dreams, Luffy. He wouldn't have given Luffy that speech like Shanks did. Be a good pirate, but don't lose your essence of freedom. Kaido would probably look at Luffy and start laughing mockingly, thinking his dreams were a joke. You want to be Pirate King? Hahaha, show me what you've got. Instead of motivating Luffy to pursue his ideals, Kaido might have beaten him up. Not to teach him a lesson, but to see how far he would go, like a toy in the hands of a giant. Instead of dreaming of adventures and freedom, Luffy might have started believing that to be the Pirate King, he would have to be the strongest, the most brutal, maybe even selfish. A much darker idea of being the best, something completely different from the vision Shanks gave him. And what if Kaido decided to train Luffy? It wouldn't be a training of wisdom or life lessons like Shanks did. In reality, Kaido would probably put Luffy in insane situations like, oh, you want to be a pirate? Then go fight an army and show me what you're capable of. Or worse, he could have thrown Luffy alone in a super dangerous place, like dumping the kid on an island full of monsters just to see if he could survive. This kind of training would have made Luffy grow fast, but in a much more wild and impulsive way. He wouldn't learn about the importance of friends or honor, but rather how to punch until he falls. Luffy would have been more brutal, more solitary, and maybe even colder. What about Luffy's view on what it means to be a pirate? If he had met Kaido, he wouldn't have the same understanding of freedom and friendship that he gained from Shanks. Kaido is the guy who only thinks about power, destruction, and control, and he might have made Luffy think that the real goal of being a pirate was to be the strongest, the unbeatable one, and not a symbol of freedom for others. Luffy might have started believing that to become the Pirate King, he would have to dominate everything and everyone, not win people's hearts with his joy and camaraderie. A much more selfish and darker pursuit, which could have made his journey much lonelier. Now, let's think about the crew. If Luffy had grown up under Kaido's influence, he probably would have gathered a different crew. Zoro, for example, might have become part of a fighting team formed by Luffy, but with a mentality of pure strength to impress Kaido and prove he was a top warrior. None of that making friends based on a common ideal, you know? Luffy and Zoro could have just been two guys trying to outdo each other, maybe even fighting amongst themselves to see who was the best. And what about Nami? Oh, their relationship would have been a mess. Luffy, with Kaido's spirit, probably wouldn't have sympathized much with Nami's struggle against Arlong. He would have cared more about his own goals than her suffering. If he had been that more selfish kind of pirate, the crew wouldn't have had that bond of friendship we know so well. It would have been more of a group of travel companions, each with their own ambitions, but without the strong loyalty and friendship that defines the Straw Hats. Speaking of abilities, if Kaido had given Luffy crazy training since he was a kid, he would probably have gotten stronger faster. Luffy would have mastered Haki in the blink of an eye and become a true monster of endurance. But maybe that would have made him lose a bit of his humanity, that essence that makes him connect with others. Instead of being the guy who fights Shanks with a heart full of hope and dreams, Luffy could have become a pirate who only believes in raw strength. Kaido's crazy training would have been on another level, right? It wouldn't have been that sweet training with wise tips like we saw with Shanks or even Rayleigh. No teaching the importance of being a good pirate or having patience and learning from others. If Kaido had been Luffy's mentor, it would have been brutal, insane, and limitless. A true test of physical and psychological endurance. Imagine the scene: Luffy, with his big dreams, barely knows what's coming. Instead of being welcomed with the warm atmosphere of Shanks, Kaido would probably start by saying something like, "You want to be Pirate King? Then show me what you've got. Because here, you're going to learn never to make friends and never trust anyone." It wouldn't be a friendly greeting, that's for sure. Kaido, with his cruel methods, would start shattering any romantic idea Luffy had about pirate life. If Luffy had actually gone through this kind of training, he wouldn't be the cheerful and inspiring hero we know. He would be a crazy, relentless pirate, someone who would see the world as a place where only strength matters. He would probably be more individualistic, more aggressive, and less concerned about his friends. The friendship and camaraderie that we see in Luffy, the things that make the story of One Piece so special, would be far from his heart. He would have learned to survive and win at any cost. Maybe he would have become more like Kaido in many ways, a pirate with little sense. Let's continue our discussion about what would have happened if Luffy had crossed paths with Kaido instead of Shanks, and how that would change everything in the world of One Piece. Imagine this: Luffy's big battles, the ones everyone knows and loves, would be completely different, and Wano, where Kaido rules, would undergo a radical transformation. First, if Luffy had grown up under Kaido's influence, he would likely have become someone focused more on powerful punches and destruction than on teamwork or strategy. This would change the way he faced big battles early in his journey. Think of Alabasta, for example. There, Luffy had to be creative and use his wits to defeat Crocodile. But if he had been trained by Kaido, he would probably try to crush the villain with a single blow of raw power, without worrying too much about Crocodile's weaknesses. The result? Luffy might not have needed to form as many alliances or learn as much as he did in the original arc. Now, in Skypiea, where Luffy faces Enel and uses the surprise of his immunity to electricity, the fight would have a very different tone. If Luffy had been shaped by Kaido, he probably would have mastered armament hockey much earlier, making the fight less about finding a creative solution and more about showing who has the greatest power. This would change the essence of the Skypiea arc. Moving on to Water 7 and Enia's lobby, where the relationships among Luffy's crew are put to the test, the story would have a very different vibe. Instead of being patient and trying to understand his friends' feelings, Luffy, under Kaido's command, would probably have discarded anyone who didn't follow his orders without question. Luffy's crew would be much colder and more ruthless, though still very strong. When it comes to Marineford, where Luffy tries to save Ace, it would be a crucial moment in the story, right? But if he had been shaped by Kaido, the story would be very different. Instead of acting driven by emotion as he did in the original arc, Luffy could have been more calculating, seeing everything in a colder, more pragmatic way. Maybe he would have tried to gain some strategic advantage or thought more about his own safety rather than acting purely from the heart. This would change everything, including the impact of the battle. Now, when we reach Wano, that's where things get even crazier. Wano is Kaido's domain, and Luffy enters with the mission to defeat him. But what if, instead of wanting to liberate Wano, Luffy had become an ally, or even a successor to Kaido? He could even see Wano as an extension of his own ambition. His mentality would shift to something more cruel and authoritarian. The battles in Wano would be much more intense. Luffy, now a product of Kaido's training, would use ruthless, devastating tactics against his enemies. Instead of being the cheerful and optimistic Luffy we always want to see, he would become a feared warrior with monstrous control over Haki and his devil fruit. He would be more aggressive, perhaps even more dangerous than Kaido, if that's possible. The final battle against Kaido would also be a whole different show. In chapter 1000, Luffy already declares he will defeat Kaido and free Wano, but in this alternate world, maybe he would be fighting alongside Kaido, battling the samurais and Big Mom's pirates. Imagine Luffy fighting against his former crew. Zoro, Nami, and the others could rebel against him, creating an epic war between former friends where loyalty and ideals would be completely turned upside down. In the end, if Luffy were influenced by Kaido, he would become a very different guy. He would lose much of his cheerful spirit and sense of justice that makes him unique. Wano, which was originally a stage for liberation, would become a place of surprising alliances and massive battles. And of course, the journey to find the One Piece would take new, much more unpredictable and darker directions. This alternate scenario makes us realize how the people and encounters a character has throughout their life can change their destiny in incredible ways. It's a reminder that everything that happens around us shapes us, for better or worse. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.